everybody. It's Helen Hillix, intuitive counselor, spiritual coach, and I'm hopping on today to talk about the difference it makes when we focus on being understanding instead of being understood. Putting all our energy into being understood. Hey, hi from Holland. Hey, Michelle, you figured it out. Awesome. I'm talking today about how much energy we spend on being understood rather than being understanding. And it's even weird because we don't even understand ourselves. You know, we spend so much time trying to get the other person to understand us when we don't even understand ourselves. I mean, I'm going to give you some examples to start out with because that always helps me kind of ground the conversation. And I use myself often because I don't mind disclosing and I make a million mistakes just like everybody else. So the thought that I had earlier was that I have spent so much time in my marriage trying to get my husband to understand what he ought to be doing. For instance, that we had a long conversation the other night because I have basically two jobs now, this online job and then my clients, that I already had a full therapy practice. And he has kind of, in a meditation, came to him that his job was to support the household. He does have two part-time jobs, but he works way less than I do. So that was his whole idea, was it would be so cool if he took on the household, but it's completely not anything he's ever done in 72 years. I was always the one who has organized everything and watches when the tree has to be trimmed or whatever. So we had this long conversation in bed the other night in which I was trying to make him, I was trying to be understood, that don't you see that blah, 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 blah. Instead, I didn't spend any time on trying to understand what he was experiencing and how overwhelming this must be for him to take on. And it was only, when I turned over to go to sleep that I thought, that was kind of a waste of energy. And I spent a lot of time trying to be understood when I didn't really even understand what my motive was, and I certainly didn't understand what he was feeling. So the next morning I said, I'm really sorry that I spent all that time instead of just saying, I know that you must be overwhelmed by this job. How can I support you? I mean, oh my God, what are you feeling? Let me understand what you're going through and how I can support you. And we did have that conversation the next day. And of course, it went way better. And so I don't know if you guys can give me some examples in the comments of situations that you've had when you're trying to be understood rather than be understanding. But it comes up in relationships all the time with our children, and with our partners, and with our friends and coworkers, everywhere. It comes up everywhere. The thing that just popped into my mind is, let's take the Democrats and the Republicans. I know that my friend from Holland, is not here having this particular dynamic, but I know you have political parties there too. So instead of, hey, Ryan, we're talking about spending how much time we spend trying to be understood rather than trying to understand the other person or even understand ourselves. And I was going to bring up I've given an example already personally, but I want to bring up the example of like the Democrats and Republicans. How much time do you think they have spent, or we have spent since we're a part of it, trying to understand the other party's perspective? How much time? I don't see it. When the elections were happening, all I saw was people blasting their perspective on Facebook or Instagram and other people blasting their perspective. I never saw anybody, zero time, Ryan says, zero time. That's great. Hey, Donald Carey, welcome. We're talking about being understanding rather than focusing all our energy on being understood. And we were talking about the Democrats and Republicans, about how little time, if any, we spend trying to understand the other person's perspective. It's astounding, really. It is just astounding. We are not taught to do that. So I'd like to just think about that for a minute. Let's use the political thing for just a second. And if you guys have some other examples, please type them in the comments and I will respond to those. What do you think the Republicans' idea, what do you think they're feeling in the need for building a wall? And on the other hand, why do you think the Democrats are so opposed to building the wall? Well, don't we all, when it comes down to it, if we had a really heart-to-heart conversation with somebody that was on the opposing side, whichever one you happen to believe in, wouldn't you sit down and say, tell me why, tell me what you're feeling, tell me what you really believe is going to be accomplished by this, and what feeling is coming up that makes this seem like a reasonable answer. And then listen, really listen to the fear, there's a lot of that, a lot of that. And again, whether we're listening to opposing political sides or whether we're talking to our boyfriend or fiance or husband or wife or kid, we feel so much anxiety about getting our needs met. So much anxiety about getting our needs met. Just take that in for a second. Most of us grow up in dysfunctional families. I mean, I say most, maybe there are some. I never met any, and I've been in counseling for 35 years. I've been doing counseling. So I don't know whether there are any or not, but most of us were raised in dysfunctional families where we did not get our needs met. We did not learn to listen to each other's needs and to each other's feelings. We just didn't. And so we grew up with this fear that we're not going to get our needs met. And of course, that compels us to believe that we have to make the other person understand what our needs are. I have a couple that I'm working with that he wants freedom. He works hard, he makes a good living, he supports his wife and 2 kids. He wants freedom. He wants to go out and do what he wants to. He's not doing anything bad. And the wife wants him to stay home. She wants him to prove that he loves the family and stay home, or come home early or whatever. And they don't try to understand each other's needs. They just try. He rebels and she tries to control. There's no understanding whatsoever. Michelle says Republicans want a wall for protection. People travel with passports for a reason, so we know who is where. Democrats feel it is racist to turn anyone away. Well, that is absolutely, there's some truth to all of that. But I think if we even get underneath those surface reasons for it, there are feelings that we actually share. That we all want to be safe. That's a universal human feeling. We want to be safe. We want to have our families be safe. We want a feeling of well-being. We want to feel kind. We want to feel loving. And it's like if we could come together and find the ways that we have, the things that we have in common, then we could come up with a real solution for immigration, even though it's an incredibly complicated thing. I was reading about it in Time magazine, and it's like, I think the headline on the front page was something like that: why we can't stop the global migration. I don't want to get into it now, but what they were saying is, if we all could come together and understand each other's needs, then we could come up with something that might work a lot better. And it works exactly the same way. Michelle agrees that, hi, Trevor, welcome. We're talking about why we spend so much time trying to be understood instead of being understanding. Whether we're talking about politics or whether we're talking about a couple, it's the same thing. We're so afraid we're not going to get our needs met. And again, whether it's the Republicans terrified that their country's going to be overwhelmed with immigrants and lose their jobs, or the Democrats are terrified that people will be racist and whatever, whatever it is, everybody's afraid they're not going to get their needs met. So if you're in a relationship with someone intimately, it's the exact same thing. I'm afraid my husband isn't going to take on his newfound calling of, being the household monitor and taking responsibility for the functioning of the household, because he got that in a meditation. and it feels right. I'm afraid I'm not going to get my needs met, that he's not going to take it on, and that it's still all going to be on me as well as my two jobs. And he's afraid that he's going to fail. He's not going to do a good job. He's not going to do nearly as good a job as I am doing. And Michelle says, we are run by our fears. Amen. So true. I'm afraid of that, and he's afraid he's going to be overwhelmed. And I'm afraid, this is the thing, though, I'm afraid that if I listen to all of his feelings, that somehow, and this probably comes from sibling rivalry as a kid, that it's like somehow his feelings are going to out prioritize my feelings. We'd have so little faith that if we really open our hearts and listen to what the other person is feeling and what the other person needs, that somehow then we're not going to get our needs met. But it's so the opposite, guys. It's so the opposite. It's only when we do what's for the highest good of all, including each individual, that anybody gets their needs met anyway. Let's say for a minute that he takes on the household things and just kind of overrides his feelings and does it kind of from an energy of resentment and obligation. Is that going to feel good to me? No. Same thing with a love relationship. If one person gives in to the other person, like I was saying about that couple that where he wants freedom and she wants control and wants him to be home more, it's like if he gives in and just does what she wants, are they going to have a happy marriage? Absolutely not. Because he's going to feel controlled and manipulated. He's going to feel pussy whipped and pissed. And so it's like, it's not going to work. It is totally not going to work. It only works if we really come to an understanding of each other's needs. If I understand that he needs to feel useful and good about this job that he's taking on, Michelle says a healthy relationship doesn't demand anything from the other person that isn't given with an open hand. Absolutely. So true. We have to realize that at some point. And the person can only give with an open hand if they feel like that you have a genuine understanding of their experience. That's the only way they're going to really feel like giving with an open hand. So it's not a complicated idea, but it is hard to do because we are not taught to set aside our agendas. We are taught to hold on to our agendas for dear life. The same things with the political parties. It's like if we could set aside our agendas, whether it's for tax cuts or the wall or it's for universal health care, if we could set aside our agenda on whichever side and come together with an open heart and really have open-hearted discussions about what is for the highest good of all, we would come up with something that fit for everybody. Yeah. Michelle again says she loves this example you're using of our two relationships. We're just an ordinary couple. We have a lot of consciousness. We've done a lot of work. We work through things. That's part of the reason that I use our marriage as an example so often, is because we do have breakdowns, all the time, but we work through them so easily because we've done the hard work that it takes to be able to do it. But it doesn't mean it still doesn't happen, and so they're just easy examples for me to use. And my clients anonymously, the examples there too, and the world, of course, the political parties and the whole world give me lots of examples of people not being understood and being just devoted to being understood. So we're not taught to set aside our agenda, are we? And this is where the ego comes in. The ego has an agenda that I want to be right. I want my needs to be met. I. And of course, the other person or the other party has their ego going, and it's like they feel exactly the same way. I. So where's the we? There is no we. And when I get into that place where I am stuck on my agenda, I'm not understanding myself either, am I? Because what do I really need, guys? What do we all really need? What are the basic things we really need? Isn't love kind of at the foundation of it all? Love, belonging, feeling safe again. And am I going to get my basic need met if I hold on to my agenda? No, I'm not. And so I'm not even understanding myself. When I get into any kind of agenda, I'm not understanding myself because my most basic need is to belong, to be loved, and to feel safe. And I know it's the same for everyone else. So if we understand ourselves, hey, psychic therapist, welcome. We're talking about the inordinate amount of energy we spend trying to be understood instead of trying to understand, and how it's only in the coming together and the setting aside of our agendas that we have a chance of really finding out what is for the highest good of all and having everybody's needs be met. And this brings up another thing that I'm probably going to go into in a separate live video, but I want to mention it here, is the idea of compromise and negotiation. I think it's bullshit. Because, and I was talking to this man and woman the other day about that he wants freedom and she wants to control him and have him home and, you know, with the family, and she wants to control how often he has freedom. And so they often try, and for 9 years they've been trying to compromise and negotiate. And so what happens? How do they feel, guys? She feels pissed off that he gets more freedom than she wants him to have, and he feels totally pissed off that he gets less freedom than he thinks he should have. So neither one of them's happy. And that's the nature of compromise, is that neither person is happy. They both feel like they got screwed, and they're just, you know, giving up their power so that they can stay in the relationship. So don't settle for compromise when you're, and so when this couple, for instance, is talking about she needs to feel safe and have him at home at a reasonable, what she thinks is reasonable hour. He needs to have freedom to go express himself. He works hard. He makes good money. He's a responsible guy. You know, when they start talking about that, the only thing that's going to help them is to understand what's underneath his need for freedom. What's underneath that? Hey, Michael, welcome. And what is underneath her need to have him be home at a certain hour and to be able to have input into how often he goes out? What's underneath there? You know, again, it comes back to the understanding. Once they understand, then they can check in. And this is, again, this could be a whole other live video, but about using some sort of process where they both get neutral and they check in with higher consciousness, God, whatever. Hey, Manuela, welcome. You know, if they can get neutral, then they can ask, okay, is it for the highest good of all, including each individual, for Jose to go out twice a month? And if they both hear, feel, sense yes, then that's the right answer. It may be too often for her and too little for him, but it's not a compromise, because it's not their egos deciding how many times. It's that they have understood each other and they love each other and they want to be open-hearted and just do whatever's right. And then they ask higher consciousness, they pray about it, they meditate about it. There are many, many processes to use where we turn over our agenda and just ask for guidance. And that's really the only way that ultimately you get to come together. And, you know, when you consciously can't do it, you know, is just to surrender it and turn it over and ask for guidance. Self-reliance versus God-reliance, Michelle says. Yes, and whatever you call God, higher power, the universe, the source, you know, whatever it is, we get to have that in our lives because it is the next step after getting rid of our agenda, is that there's got to be somebody smarter than me. There's got to be something smarter than me. If there isn't, we are all screwed, guys. We are all completely hopeless, because I am not that wise. I do not know the answer to everything, and neither do you. I don't care what your ego tells you, how smart you are, how much you know. I mean, it's like I've been a therapist for 35 years and I still do the stupidest things. The stupidest things. I'm a human being and I always will be. But I know enough to stop and to say, I want to understand this situation. I want to understand my beloved husband. I want to understand my daughter. I want to understand my clients. I don't want to just be understood, and coming from that ego place. And thank you guys for all the hearts. I just love it. And I love you for being here and supporting me today in this conversation. It makes it so much easier for me. So much easier for me because I feel all of your energy with me. And of course, that goes back to what I was saying before, is what are the basic needs that we have? I don't think being right is a basic need. Do you? I don't think so. I don't think being understood, at the expense of not understanding the other person or ourselves is a basic need either. I'm getting my basic need met right now to be of service to humanity by talking to you about this and feeling your love and support for my work. And it's like I feel completely fulfilled. I want to understand you. I want to understand what you need. I want to offer it to you if I have it to give. And again, it's like whatever is for the highest good of all. I don't just, thank you so much, Michelle. You have so much wisdom to share. I appreciate that. I don't want to be right. And this, my sister was telling me, what is it that makes you get touched so often that you have tears in your lives? And it is this connection that I feel with you. I can feel people's connection. This is why I'm an intuitive counselor, because I can feel it. Someone very dear to me, a couple was in a real crisis recently, and I couldn't sleep. I was feeling their pain, and I could just tap into it anytime, and I could feel where they were in their process. And I thought, what can I do? I can't just call and say, let me help you. But I thought I could hop on and do a live video, and that's what I did the next morning. So, we are all so connected, guys. We need to stop pretending that we're not. We are all connected. I don't care about age, race, religion, anything. We are all one. Empath, yes. And so are you. Everybody is really an empath. Thank you, Michael. So it's like we get to shift our ways. We get to keep learning and growing. I mean, that's what we're here for, isn't it? I'm so excited about it. I really am. I mean, it's like, this is what gets me up in the morning. This is what gets me going, is I get to grow and change today. I get to do something stretchy. I get to feel nervous when I'm going on to a live video and wonder if I have a damn thing to say, and I get to push myself through it anyway because I know it's for the highest good of all. And this is what gets us going every day, is we get to learn and grow. We get to be brand new. And one of the ways that we can be brand new is to focus on understanding other people and understanding our own motives instead of continually pushing to be understood, to make a point. I got to make a point. You're going to listen to me. I'm going to make a point. And man, I've heard so many parents do that. Oh my God, it makes me so sad for them and for their kids, because they're just creating a huge distance and there's no understanding being created. If we can understand why our children do things and they can understand why we're concerned about them, then again, you can come together and you can check in about what's for the highest good. It isn't all about, you need to respect me and do what I say. We see where that leads, don't we? The domination, the hierarchy in our whole society, the hierarchy and the whole Me Too movement. I mean, let's not even go there. But it just creates separation instead of the coming together, whether it's parent and child coming to understandings, so that you are preparing your child to be able to understand and express their feelings and figure things out. You're training them that way instead of either just listening and doing what they're told or rebelling. That's what mostly we're taught. And so that's what happens in our marriages. When I bring up something, my husband feels dominated. When he brings up something, I feel dominated. And so we've had to learn over these past 12 years to understand each other and to have compassion and keep our intention in mind, guys. Our intention is always to get back to the connection. And sometimes we forget that. And we get hijacked by our egos telling us that our intention is to be right, but it isn't. Our real heart's desire is to go back to that feeling of peace and safety and oneness, whether it's between us and God, between us and our partner, between us and our children, between the political parties, whatever it is. That's really our heart's desire, is to come back to a place of peace and oneness. So I challenge you to take this on, focus on understanding, and notice when you're not, and don't beat yourself up. Try to understand why. And I would love for you guys to contact me, write me a message on Instagram or Facebook, or email me at helen@helenhillix.com. Ryan says the need to be right will always result in me being wrong, even if I end up being right. I damage that relationship trying to force it. I'd much rather understand with compassion. Well, you're a brilliant man, Ryan. That's all I can say. You got it. Pray for insight. Absolutely, Michelle. Pray for insight. There you go. Pray for insight. That requires an open mind and an open heart. If something's bothering you, pray for insight. If you think you're absolutely right about it, pray for insight anyway. Okay, guys, I love you. Thank you so much for joining me. Focus on understanding and have a great day. And I will be back again soon talking to you about something else, maybe compromise or some other thing we've talked about today, and go into more depth in that. So I love you, and thanks again for joining.